The first time I saw the smoke, it wasn't from a fire. It was a perfect column, thin, unwavering, and the wrong color. Not grey or black like burning pine, but something closer to deep blue, shimmering like oil on water. It rose from the trees in the southern stretch of Clearwater National Forest, far beyond any marked trails. I checked my map twice. No cabins, no campgrounds, nothing. It was my third summer working the tower. I'd been stationed up here long enough to know every ridgeline, every echo, every false alarm. There's a rhythm to the wilderness when you live above it for weeks at a time, and I'd grown fluent in its silences. That's why the smoke rattled me. I radioed it in. Dispatch logged it and sent out a spotter plane. An hour later, they came back with nothing. No visible column, they said, might have been morning mist. But I'd taken a photo, and when I tried to show them, the image was gone, replaced by a blank grey blur, like my camera lens had fogged up at just that one moment. That should have been the end of it. Just another weird story from an isolated job. But that night, I heard the voice on the radio. It came in between the standard check-ins, just past 2 a.m. A sharp hiss of static, then a child's whisper, "Help me. I'm cold." I sat bolt upright, heart hammering, headset slipping from my fingers. I tried responding, "This is Lookout 17. Who is this?" But there was only static. Then again, quieter, "Help me. He's coming." The signal cut. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I logged the call. Dispatch chalked it up to a possible ham radio prank or weather interference. "You'd be surprised what picks up on those frequencies," they said. But that wasn't interference. That was a voice. Real and terrified. And it wouldn't be the last one. I started this job thinking it'd be a peaceful gig. Solitude, nature, a break from the world. I was burned out. Years working as an EMT had left me frayed. Up here in the high places, I thought I could be still. But stillness has its own horrors, especially when you realize you're the only one watching. 2 weeks after the voice, I saw the first hiker go missing. He was wearing a red jacket, pacing along Trail 9. I saw him clearly through my binoculars around 11 a.m. By 1 p.m., he hadn't reappeared on the lower switchback. By 3, I reported him. Search and rescue launched at dawn. They never found him. No body, no bag, no trace. A week later, another hiker vanished. Then another. The official word was misadventure. The terrain's rough, bears are common, and people underestimate the backcountry. But the pattern was too precise. Every disappearance within my line of sight. Every victim traveling alone. I started keeping a notebook, coordinates, times, weather. I even mapped the sightings, looking for something, anything, that would make it all make sense. But the only pattern I found was this. Whatever was happening, it wanted to be seen. By me. Late that fall, when most of the seasonal staff had cleared out and snow was creeping down from the Bitterroots, I saw the man for the first time. He was standing on a ridge half a mile away, just beyond the old fire trail. Dressed in dark clothes, he didn't move, didn't wave, just stood there, facing my tower. I watched him for 5 full minutes. Then I blinked, and he was gone. Not walked away. Gone. Like someone had cut him out of the landscape with scissors. I descended the tower, boots crunching over frost, and hiked out to the ridge. Nothing, no prints, no signs anyone had stood there. That night, the voice returned on the radio. But it wasn't the child, it was mine, crackling, distant. Like it had been recorded and played back. "It's watching you," my voice said. "Don't look directly at it." I dropped the headset and backed away. The forest outside was dark, starless. I locked the hatch to the stairs and sat against the door with a flashlight until morning. I didn't tell anyone that time. Who would believe me? It's easy to lose track of reality when you're alone. Your brain looks for patterns in silence. But this wasn't in my head. The disappearances were real. The voices were real. That shimmering column of smoke. I saw it again, 2 more times, always in the same place, and each time I lost power in the tower for exactly 13 minutes. No signal, no light. Just dead silence and the low thrum of something outside the glass, circling. After the 3rd time, I hiked to the smoke's location. I brought a camera, a radio, a flare gun. I followed the ridge, climbed down into the basin. When I reached the spot, I found scorched trees, perfectly circular, like a campfire had gone nuclear. The center was a crater no more than 6 feet wide. Inside the crater, a charred piece of metal, half buried in the soil, marked with a symbol I'd never seen before, 2 overlapping triangles, one inverted, surrounded by tally marks etched into the steel. I reached down to touch it, and the sky screamed. A pressure spike slammed through my ears, and I dropped to my knees. The forest around me bent, literally bent, like watching film warp in a heat wave. My vision tunneled. I saw my own tower, burning. My body slumped on the floor, a face looking back at me through the fire. It was me, but not me. Then I woke up at the base of the tower. No memory of how I got there. The flare gun was gone, the camera was fried. And the metal artifact, still in my pack. It was warm, still pulsing. I didn't report the metal object, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know who to trust anymore. After what I'd seen, I was sure someone would label me unstable. At best, I'd be pulled from the tower. At worst, I'd be institutionalized. So I kept it hidden, buried in a locked storage box beneath the floorboards of my cabin, wrapped in 3 layers of aluminum foil. A weak attempt, maybe, but something told me that object was dangerous, that it wanted to be found. But not by me. For a few weeks after that, things calmed down. No more phantom smoke, no more strange transmissions. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it all. Seasonal isolation psychosis. That's what the pamphlet had warned about. Long-term solitude may cause mild hallucinations and time distortion. But then the missing time started. It began small, 10 minutes gone here, a quarter hour there. I'd glance at the clock, blink, and realize I'd lost a chunk of time I couldn't account for. Once I brewed coffee, stepped outside for some fresh air, and when I returned, the entire pot was gone. The grounds were cool, like I'd brewed it hours ago. My hands trembled for the rest of the day. Then I found the tape. Each tower is equipped with an old reel-to-reel recording device. It's meant to archive radio traffic for review, standard procedure, but mine hadn't worked in years. Or so I thought. That morning, it was running. The reels spun lazily. I stopped them, heart thudding. When I rewound and played back the previous night's audio, I expected to hear nothing but wind and static. Instead, I heard my own voice, but I hadn't made any transmissions. "I can't stop it," the voice said, shaking. "It's learning how to use me. I don't know how much longer I have. If you find this, burn the tower." There was a click, then breathing. Heavy, wrong, followed by one more line, so distorted I could barely understand it. "They're not watching you through the trees, they're watching with them." The tape ended. I stopped sleeping. I spent every night with the lights on, coffee pot running on fumes. Every creak in the floorboards made me jump. I started locking the hatch and nailing boards across it. No one could get in. Nothing could climb up. But something did. It was 3:47 a.m. when I heard the scratching. Faint, like dry fingers dragging across glass. It came from the window directly behind me. I turned slowly, flashlight in hand. There was nothing there, just the fog creeping in over the valley, heavy and low. Then came the knock. 3 taps, soft, deliberate, on the glass to my right. I spun around, heart hammering, and caught a glimpse of something tall slipping below the window frame. Too tall to be a person, too fast to be an animal. I lunged to the radio. "This is Lookout 17. I've got a possible intruder." Repeat, "Possible intruder on the tower." Static. Then the line went dead. I tried the emergency band. Nothing. Even my weather radio was silent. And that's when I heard my own voice again. Not on the radio this time, but echoing softly from the speaker in the corner of the room. The speaker that hadn't worked in years. "I shouldn't have touched it," the voice said. "Now it sees through me." I backed away slowly. The speaker fizzled. I slammed the power off and bolted the remaining shutters. Outside, the fog was thicker than ever. It crawled up the legs of the tower like smoke. I sat on the floor until dawn, holding a flare I didn't remember loading. When the sun finally rose, I went down the ladder, heart pounding every step of the way. There were footprints in the dirt below. Barefoot, human, Except they didn't lead to the tower. They led away, from directly beneath it. I started digging into the history of Clearwater National Forest. Not the tourist brochures, the real history. Old fire lookout logs, archived search and rescue reports, declassified ranger field notes. Turns out I wasn't the first one to report strange activity in this patch of forest. In 1979, a ranger named Hal Bowman vanished during routine patrol. His last transmission, "There's something in the smoke." He was never found. In 1983, an entire trail crew went missing overnight. Camp still intact, food uneaten. The logs mention radio anomalies and possible fugue states before redacting the rest. And in 1996, a fire lookout in Tower 12 jumped to his death. His final entry, carved into the wall with a knife: "I was wrong, the tower doesn't keep you safe, it amplifies them." That tower was less than 5 miles from mine. I drove out there that weekend. It had been decommissioned for years, the wood rotten, the ladder collapsed. But someone, or something, had tried to rebuild it. New boards nailed crudely to old ones, a half-finished platform. At the base of the tower was a pile of burned notebooks, all of them identical to mine. When I returned to my own tower, something had changed. The metal object I'd hidden was no longer under the floor. It was sitting on my desk, glowing faintly, as if it had never left. I stared at it, paralyzed, my own breath fogging up the glass. Then the radio crackled to life, not static, not my voice, but a signal I'd never heard before, soft music, playing backwards, layered over distant screaming. It played for exactly 13 seconds, then silence, followed by a whisper I felt more than heard. "You opened it." I didn't. I swear to God I didn't open it. But something did. When they found the first body, they didn't call it murder. The hiker had been missing for over a month, and by the time a group of hunters stumbled across the remains near the Clearwater Basin, the forest had done its work. Scavengers, rain, time. The skull had no jaw. The torso was stripped down to the ribs. But what struck me, and eventually the sheriff, was the absence of shoes. Cleanly removed. Placed beside the body, toes pointing outward, like someone had undressed him, or staged him. I knew that basin. It was less than 2 miles from where I'd seen that red-jacketed hiker disappear a year prior. I'd watched him walk that same trail. 1 second he was there, and the next, gone. That was the beginning of what the press would later dub the Trail Killer. 4 victims over 2 seasons, all solo hikers, all within visible range of Lookout 17. I'd seen 3 of them through my binoculars. I'd logged their routes, reported them when they didn't check in. Every time I told myself I was doing the right thing, watching, observing, being the eye in the sky. But it didn't feel like that anymore. It felt like I was being used, as if the killer knew exactly where my sightline ended, and waited just beyond it. In late June, I saw him. It was early evening. I was scanning the ridges with my scope when something flickered just beyond the south trail. Movement, too smooth to be an animal. I adjusted the lens. There he was. Not the killer, the next victim. A young woman in her 20s, hiking alone. Backpack, water bottle in hand, earbuds in. No satellite beacon, no trail partner. She was singing. I couldn't hear her, but I could see her mouthing words. Behind her something moved. A shape in the trees. Thin, upright. I couldn't get a clear look. Branches kept interfering. But I swear it was a man in dark clothing. Just like the one I'd seen months ago. Except this time he was closer. Too close. I radioed it in immediately. "This is Lookout 17, possible stalker on Trail 12, heading southeast. Female hiker may be in danger. Coordinates uploading now." There was a pause. Then dispatch crackled back. "Copy that, 17. Ranger unit is 30 minutes out. Stay on visual." But I lost her in 5. She rounded a bend in the trail and never came back out. I scanned for hours. Nothing. The search started at dawn. Dogs, drones, helicopters. They found her pack in a creek bed 3 miles away. No blood, no prints, just her boots, placed side by side, like the others. Except this time there was something new, a symbol carved into the tree above the pack, 2 overlapping triangles, one inverted, the same mark that had been etched into the metal object. That's when I knew this wasn't just a serial killer. This was something older, something ritualistic, and somehow it was connected to the smoke, to the time lapses, to me. 2 nights later, I had a dream. I was back in the tower, staring through the scope, but when I looked down, I wasn't looking at the forest. I was looking at myself, naked, bound, lying on a stone slab deep in the woods, surrounded by shadowy figures. My body writhed, but my face didn't move. My eyes were wide open, staring at the sky, unblinking. One of the figures raised a hand. In it, the metal object. It pulsed, and my body on the slab began to smoke, blue and shimmering. Just like before. I screamed and woke up in the tower. The object was glowing again. This time it was open. I hadn't even realized it could open. It unfolded like a flower, segments clicking outward. Inside, a prism of glass that seemed to reflect things that weren't there. I saw faces, eyes, forests burning in reverse, my own tower imploding in slow motion. I slammed it shut and shoved it back under the floorboards. That's when the radio came alive again. But it wasn't static this time. It was a voice I hadn't heard before. Not mine, not the child's. A man. Calm, almost amused. "You've seen it now," he said. "You're part of the fold. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe." I grabbed the mic. "Who the hell is this?" No response, just breathing. Then he whispered, "You're the lens watcher. You always have been." The transmission cut. A week later, they caught someone, a man living out of an abandoned ranger station near the eastern trailhead. He had maps, lists of hikers, even a journal. Claimed to be a survivalist, but the sheriff's office pinned the last 2 murders on him. They called it closure. But I knew better. He wasn't the man I'd seen, and he wasn't the one carving those symbols. This was deeper, and the forest wasn't done with me. That night I found a note pinned to the outer hatch of the tower. No footprints leading to or from the ladder. The note was old, stained with something dark. It read, "The eyes above belong to him now. The tower is a wound. You are the lens that cannot close." I burned it immediately. But the next morning, the words were etched into the inside of my cabin window, not written. Etched. And I hadn't heard a single sound all night. It started on a Tuesday, cloudless skies, low humidity, perfect conditions. I was sipping instant coffee and noting barometric changes when I spotted it. A thin column of smoke rising from Ridge 9. I grabbed my binoculars, grey, slow-moving, maybe 40 feet high. The way it hung in the air made it look like a signal fire, tightly stacked, intentional. I radioed it in. "Lookout 17, possible wildfire ignition point, Ridge 9, about a mile south of Trail 14. I've got visual confirmation on smoke column." Over. Dispatch acknowledged. Rangers were deployed within the hour. I waited, eyes locked on the plume as it twisted and bent against the bright blue sky. Then the Rangers called in. "Negative on smoke column, 17. Area is clear. No fire. Repeat, no fire." I blinked. I could still see it. As plain as the day. I radioed again. "I've got eyes on it right now, same location." But they insisted nothing was there, not even scorched earth or ash. When I looked again, the smoke was gone. I convinced myself it was an atmospheric anomaly. Some strange play of light and heat. A mirage, until it happened again, and again, for 7 nights in a row, always around dusk, always on Ridge 9. The smoke would rise slowly, hang like an accusation in the air, and then vanish. By the 4th time, I stopped reporting it. The other lookouts didn't see it. The satellite heat scans didn't detect any ignition points. No camera trap caught a thing. But it was real. I could smell it. It smelled like cedar and burnt meat. Then came the night I followed it. It was reckless, I know that now, but something in me felt compelled, like the smoke was a message, and I was meant to answer it. I left at dusk with a flashlight, bear spray, and my portable radio. Ridge 9 was a 3-mile hike, steep, overgrown. The wind whispered through the branches in ways that made me feel watched. By the time I reached the ridge, the smoke had already started. It was thicker up close. It didn't rise. It hung, hovering in the trees like fog. I stepped into it, expecting to choke, but the air was cool, dry. Too dry. That's when I heard it. A crackling voice carried on the breeze, software, garbled. I lifted the radio. Nothing. Then a whisper right behind me. "It's not smoke." I turned. Nothing there. My flashlight flickered. The beam passed over a tree trunk and stopped. There was a handprint on the bark, blackened, burnt, human-sized, still warm to the touch. The ground gave way beneath me. 1 second I was reaching for the print, and the next I was falling. Not far, maybe 5 or 6 feet, but enough to knock the wind out of me. I'd landed in a shallow depression in the earth, a pit of some kind. Except the soil beneath me wasn't soil, it was ash. Layers of it. At least a foot deep. And in the center was a ring of black stones, a fire pit, still warm. But no fire, no wood, no signs of recent use. Just the ash. And the bones. Small ones. Animal maybe. Or not. One of them had a ring on it. A silver wedding band. I crawled out of there and ran all the way back to the tower. That night I locked the hatch, drew every blind, and didn't sleep a minute. At 3:33 a.m. the radio buzzed to life again. But this time it wasn't a voice, it was a scream. A man's voice, ragged, tortured, looping endlessly. Screaming the same word, down, over and over and over. It played for 13 minutes before cutting out. The next morning I checked the recording tape. There was nothing there. I reported the ash pit anonymously. Park Services sent a hazmat crew. They excavated the site, found animal remains, and evidence of illegal burn pits. That's what the official report said. But I saw the way they handled it. Gloves, masks, sealed canisters. They knew it wasn't normal. Later that week, a woman in a black government vehicle arrived at my tower. No insignia, no ID badge, just a clipboard and mirrored sunglasses. She asked about the smoke, about the scream. I told her everything. She didn't write anything down. Before she left, she handed me a sealed envelope. "There are places you shouldn't look," she said. "This tower sits between 2 of them." Then she walked away. Inside the envelope was a photograph. Of me. Taken from the forest floor, looking up into the tower, time-stamped 2 nights ago. At 3:33 a.m., the smoke hasn't come back since. But other things have. The air feels different, heavy. The forest is watching now. Sometimes I catch glimpses of something tall moving through the trees. Slender, shifting, always just beyond clear view. I found more symbols scratched into the bark on Ridge 9. 3 triangles this time, a 4th forming. And yesterday my firefinder rotated on its own. No wind, no movement. It pointed directly at Ridge 9 and clicked. When I looked through the scope, there was nothing but smoke. Rising. Slowly. And just for a moment, I thought I saw myself standing in the clearing below, staring back up. You learn the rhythms of the forest up here, the patterns of wind across the pines, the way deer move in herds and bears wander solo, how hunters hunker down in specific clearings during the season like clockwork. That's why it stood out so sharply, so violently, when something didn't fit. It was early September, the cusp of bow season. The mornings were brisk, the air sharp with the tang of moss and old pine. I was sipping weak coffee and tracking a pair of mule deer when I noticed them. A group of 5 men, all wearing blaze orange, moving as one across Trail 22. At first I thought nothing of it. Then I noticed their formation. Deliberate, tight, almost tactical. Hunters don't move like that. Hunters move in lazy arcs, spaced out, calling out sightings to each other. These men were silent, rifles slung low. One of them had a scoped rifle, not a bow, despite the regulations. Another carried a long black case strapped to his back. I radioed it in. Possible out-of-season rifle activity on Trail 22. 5 individuals, northwest bend, crossing through private conservation land. Dispatch responded flatly. "Roger, conservation officers en route." But I kept watching. The men veered off trail toward the tree line, flanking a small valley with thick underbrush. And there, crouched beneath a tangle of cedar and vine, was a 6th man. He wore no orange, just flannel. A hunter, probably real, completely unaware of the danger crawling toward him. I watched in mounting dread as two of the riflemen took up positions behind the target. Another went wide, circling to cut off retreat. It wasn't a hunt, it was an ambush. I grabbed the mic and practically shouted, "This is Lookout 17. I have eyes on an armed group targeting a solo hunter. This is not lawful hunting. Repeat, this is an ambush. Immediate response needed." No response, just static. The man in the flannel stood, stretching, probably adjusting his pack, and then he dropped, a sharp twitch, like a puppet with strings cut. One of the men stood and calmly holstered a suppressed weapon. It wasn't a hunting rifle. I screamed into the radio again, heart pounding, helpless to do anything but watch. The 5 figures converged on the body. One pulled something from the dead man's pack, papers maybe. Another crouched and retrieved a necklace from the neck. Then they did something that made my blood go cold. They raised their hands in unison and pointed them toward the fire tower, toward me, and just held them there for a full minute. Then they dispersed like wolves into the brush. I backed away from the scope, breath shaking. I felt exposed, targeted. 30 minutes later, park rangers arrived. But the body was gone. No blood, no prints, no drag marks, just a crushed patch of grass and a faint chemical smell like scorched ozone. The only trace left behind was a laminated trail pass, found wedged under a nearby log. It had my name on it. That night, I didn't sleep. I locked the hatch, double-checked my rifle, and kept the light off. Around 2 a.m., I heard movement near the base of the tower. Footsteps, not cautious, not trying to hide, just slow, methodical crunches of boots on dry needles. I peered down, nothing. Then my radio came alive again. A different voice this time, raspy, hoarse, like someone speaking through sand. "You saw what you weren't supposed to." I didn't reply. "You watched," it said, just like always. Then silence. When morning finally came, I climbed down and circled the tower. There were no prints, but carved into the wooden support beam was a symbol I hadn't seen before. A circle split into quarters, like a compass. Each quadrant had a different mark, a flame, an eye, a spiral, and a set of crossed rifles. I drew it in my notebook, then covered the carving with a metal plate from my toolbox. Later that week, I checked with dispatch. There was no record of my radio calls that day. They had no record of a group of 5. No report from rangers on Trail 22. The trail pass with my name had vanished from the station logs. It was like none of it ever happened. A week later, I received a package. No return address. Just a weathered manila envelope slipped under the tower door while I slept. Inside, a photograph, black and white, grainy. It showed the tower, my tower, burning in the night, flames licking the sky. Standing in the clearing below was a silhouette, holding a camera. Behind them were the 5 hunters, their faces obscured, and beneath the photo, scribbled in what looked like charcoal, "You only think you're alone." Something about this incident broke me a little. Until then, I'd still believed that at its core, my job was about keeping people safe, watching for smoke, guiding help, being a guardian above the trees. But I wasn't a guardian, I was bait, I was witness. These people, whatever they were, knew I was watching. They wanted me to see. Because that's what the tower is, isn't it? A lens. And now I was starting to wonder who or what was looking back. It had been a quiet couple of weeks. Too quiet. I was starting to wonder if the forest was giving me a reprieve, or just winding up for something worse. But the trees never rest for long. The wilderness hides what the world doesn't want to see, and sometimes it whispers loud enough for someone like me to hear. That whisper came in the form of a red balloon. It floated past the tower around noon, silent and eerie, carried on a lazy breeze, a single string dangling beneath it. At first, I thought nothing of it. Maybe a birthday party gone awry, some kid's helium balloon drifting up from a campground. Then another one passed by. Then a third, all identical, bright red, trailing the same torn string. That's when I picked up the binoculars. I scanned the campsites, the trailheads, the roads, and that's when I saw him. A small boy, maybe 7 or 8, standing alone at the tree line near Bear Hollow Campground. He was waving, one hand high in the air, mouth moving like he was calling out. But no one else was around. Not a single tent. Not a single parked car. The campground had been closed for the season 2 weeks ago. I called it in immediately. Unattended child at Bear Hollow. Repeat, possible missing child standing near tree line alone. Requesting immediate ranger dispatch. There was silence, then a strange response from dispatch. Bear Hollow is closed for wildlife management. No campers permitted. I know that, I said, but there's a child out there. I see him right now. Copy, rangers en route. ETA 30 minutes. Keep visual if possible. I kept my eyes on the boy. He was wearing a striped blue hoodie, jeans, red sneakers. He kept looking over his shoulder nervously. Then he stepped into the trees and vanished. I grabbed my gear and took off down the tower ladder, heart pounding. By the time I reached the campground, the boy was gone. But something else was there, a camper van, partially obscured behind a thick grove of trees. A dirty, beat-up thing, rust caked around the wheels. No license plates. I approached quietly, moving along the edge of the brush. The back doors were open. Inside, I saw ropes, duct tape, a small blanket, a teddy bear missing an eye, and a trail of candy wrappers leading into the woods. I radioed again. This is Lookout 17. I've found an unregistered vehicle near Bear Hollow. Signs of abduction. Repeat, possible kidnapping in progress. Request full law enforcement response. Copy, dispatch said. Hold position. But I didn't. I followed the wrappers into the woods. About a quarter mile in, I heard the voice. A man. Calm, friendly, too friendly. Just ahead, buddy. I told you, your parents are waiting. You're doing great. Then the boy. You said we'd get ice cream. Oh, we will. Just a little farther. I moved faster, heart hammering. The trees opened into a small clearing. The man had his hand on the boy's shoulder, leading him toward what looked like a shallow ravine. I stepped out, rifle raised. Step away from the child. The man froze. Slowly he turned toward me. He was wearing a campground host vest. But his eyes were all wrong, too wide, too pale, like something was stretched thin behind them. Like his skin was a mask worn too long. He smiled. Oh, thank God. I found him wandering. I was just taking him to the ranger station. That station is 10 miles the other direction, I said. Put your hands up. The man's smile faded. You shouldn't be here, he said. You weren't supposed to see. He dropped his facade like shedding skin. His whole posture shifted, his face twisted into something colder. He reached toward his belt. I fired once, just beside his leg. He stopped. Rangers arrived minutes later and tackled him before he could run. The boy, Colton, had been missing for 2 days. His parents were in hysterics when they found out he'd been found alive. He never told them much, only that the campground man said his parents had left and he had to follow him. No one knew who the man was. He wasn't in any system. No prints, no ID. The vest was authentic, but it belonged to someone who'd gone missing from another park 2 years ago. They said he must have stolen it. But I saw the way he looked at me. He knew who I was. He knew about the tower. A week later, I got another envelope, no return address. Inside, a photo of the boy standing outside the tower, smiling, holding the red balloon. Time stamped, 1 hour before I spotted him. The photo was taken from inside my tower, from my chair, but I wasn't there. Also in the envelope was a typed note. You broke the loop. But it's still watching. I didn't understand at first, until I reviewed the tower logs from years past. Buried in an incident report from 5 years before. A missing child, same area, same name, Colton Wessler. Never found, presumed dead. It was the same boy, same face, same striped hoodie, same red shoes, identical. Some nights I see the balloon float past the tower again. Always the same one. Always silent. Sometimes it's followed by the soft patter of footsteps at the base of the tower. Too light for an adult, too rhythmic for an animal. And once, in the dead of night, my radio whispered a child's voice, very faint, very tired. He found me again. Then silence. The next morning, there were fresh footprints in the dirt, and at the edge of the clearing, resting against a rock, was a new red balloon. tied to a teddy bear with one eye missing. In my time up here, I've come to recognize the signs of an emergency before the official call even comes through. A sudden hush in the forest, the faint drone of helicopters in the distance, the way animals shift, birds vanishing from view, squirrels darting erratically like they sense something wrong. That morning, the entire forest felt wrong. It started with the smoke, not fire, engine exhaust. 4 black SUVs tore up the maintenance road near Old Creek Trail, their tires kicking up dust like a storm. Minutes later, the radio came to life. Attention all towers. Be advised, we have a code red situation. 2 escaped convicts last seen heading into Clearwater from Route 11. Armed and extremely dangerous. Full perimeter lockdown in effect. Copy, I said. Tower 17 scanning. They didn't give names, but I didn't need names when I saw the photograph later that day. One of them was Vince. The other was a man named Garrett Kane, ex-military, dishonorably discharged, tied to 4 unsolved murders along the Pacific Northwest. They'd escaped during a prison transport, and rumor had it someone helped them from the outside. I spent the next 12 hours glued to my scope, scanning for movement. The convicts were last seen 2 miles from my tower. They were heading north, toward me. Night fell fast. The forest was a black sea, shifting with unseen currents. I could barely breathe. The thought of Vince being out there, again, sent ice down my spine. He wasn't just a convict. He was my past, rising from the grave. The man who'd stalked me in college, who'd broken into my apartment, who swore I'd never escape his sight. And now I was trapped in a glass box in the sky. Alone. Around 11 p.m., the floodlights at the base of the tower flickered. Then died. Generator failure. That never happens. I checked the fuel, full. I tried the manual start, nothing. Then my radio buzzed, faint and full of static. Your eyes are open again. I froze. That wasn't a ranger. Then a new voice cut through, clear, calm, and official. Lookout 17. This is Special Agent Lewis. We're at your base. Stay inside. Do not engage. I peeked out the trapdoor. Sure enough, 3 figures in tactical gear at the base of the tower. But something was off. They weren't wearing insignia. No U.S. Marshals patches. No park ranger emblems. And they weren't looking up at me. They were looking into the woods, weapons raised. Then I saw the 4th figure emerge from the trees. Vince. His shirt was torn, eyes wild, body smeared with mud like war paint. But it was him. He smiled when he saw the tower, saw me. Then sprinted forward. The agents opened fire, short, controlled bursts. Vince dropped, blood spraying, but when I looked again, he was gone. Vanished into the underbrush. The agents didn't chase him. Instead, one of them looked up at me through a pair of night vision goggles and waved like he was glad I'd seen. They left without speaking to me, no debrief, no update. The next morning, I found shell casings at the base of the tower and a red handprint smeared across the door. Not blood, paint, same color as the balloon. 2 days later, I was told the manhunt was over. The convicts had died in a river crossing. Bodies recovered, case closed, but I wasn't buying it. The next night, someone climbed the tower stairs. No lights, no sound, just the creak of metal under careful feet. I sat in the dark with my rifle trained on the hatch. And then, tap, 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 3 knocks on the trap door. I didn't move. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe. A voice, barely above a whisper, followed. You can't keep watching forever. Then silence. When I finally opened the hatch at dawn, there was no one there. But burned into the wood was another symbol. Same circle as before, but now the spiral quadrant had grown larger, spilling into the others, like it was consuming them. I considered quitting right then, packing up, leaving. But a week later, I received another package. This one contained security camera footage. From the ranger station, time-stamped the night of the manhunt. It showed Vince, alive, standing beside Agent Lewis, laughing, shaking hands. Behind them, barely visible through the window, was a screen showing my tower's live feed. My camera, my view, my eyes. They had been watching me watch them. The note attached was handwritten this time. The fugitives were never running. You were. And now we've caught up. That's when I began to understand. This wasn't just about strange events or chance encounters, it was a web, a network of orchestrated horrors, all orbiting this tower like moths around flame. And I was the lens, the unwilling observer, but not the only one. Because something else, something ancient, was watching through me, and it wanted me to keep seeing. I used to trust the radio. Up here, it's your lifeline, your only voice in the dark when the world below is smothered in pine and shadow. It's how you call for help when there's a fire or a bear or a bleeding camper. And in return, you hear the voices of the other towers scattered across the peaks, people like me, each clinging to their tiny outpost of sanity. But the voices stopped, and something else started speaking. It began on a fog-choked morning, the kind where the mist hangs low like a curtain and the world feels half-dreamed. I was sipping bitter coffee, thumbing through the old tower logbook, entries dating back to the 70s, when the static kicked in. Loud, violent, sharp as teeth. I flinched, nearly spilling the mug. The radio hadn't made a sound in hours, but now it shrieked like it was choking on a signal. Then came the voice, faint, distant, full of static. Mayday, this is Echo Victor 19er, coordinates unknown, visibility 0, repeat, I think I'm lost in time. I froze. It wasn't a ranger, not a hiker, and the call sign, Echo Victor 19er, didn't match any active units. I grabbed the mic. Echo Victor 19er, this is Clearwater Tower 17. Do you copy? Please confirm coordinates. Static. Then, the sun is wrong. It hasn't moved in days. I see something in the tree line, but it doesn't cast a shadow. The transmission dissolved into white noise. I checked with dispatch. They said they hadn't received any other transmissions. I asked if anyone was flying that call sign. Silence. Then, Tower 17, there is no Echo Victor 19er. Please confirm your equipment isn't malfunctioning. But it wasn't. My gear was clean, no cross frequencies, nothing explainable. And I'd heard it again the next morning. The trees are bleeding now. Please, if anyone can hear me, don't come looking. The voice was more distorted, more panicked. But this time I recorded it. I played it back on loop, analyzing every word, every background crackle. At one point, there was a strange tone behind the voice. A low hum. I ran it through a spectrogram. The waveform wasn't random. It formed a shape, a spiral. Just like the ones burned into my tower. That night, I found a new folder on my tower computer, labeled Riptide. I didn't put it there. No one should have had access. My system wasn't connected to the network by regulation. Inside were dozens of audio logs, transmissions like the ones I'd heard. Some were old, dated as far back as 1982. All shared the same themes: loss of time, strange figures in the trees, changes in the sky. One log chilled me more than the others. Log number 14, they built it under the mountain, said it was for weather research. Project Riptide, but it's not weather down there, it's reality. They're studying rips, cracks, loops. I think they're using the towers as conduits. Our eyes, our ears. If you're hearing this, you're already part of it. There was a map attached. It showed Clearwater National Forest. Beneath it, deep underground, was a vast grid labeled with coded structures. Riptide Facility B was right under my tower. I tried to leave the next day, packed my gear, hiked 10 miles to the ranger station. But when I got there, it was abandoned. Papers scattered, radios dead, coffee still warm, like everyone had just walked out seconds ago. Then I found the camera feed, dozens of live screens showing different towers. Some showed the usual, trees, clouds, movement. Others showed impossible things. One tower had 2 versions of the same person, standing side by side. Another showed me asleep at my desk, even though I was wide awake and watching. I yanked the power cord and ran. When I returned to my tower, there was a message carved into the door. You are the tower now. That night, the voice returned. But this time, it wasn't through the radio. It came from the mirror in the supply closet, whispered as I passed. You're listening the wrong way. I shattered the mirror. Behind it, taped to the wall, was a reel of old magnetic tape, labeled Final Transmission, Do Not Play. But of course I did. The audio was warped, degraded, but I could still make out fragments. Initiating phase shift. Observer has stabilized. Eyes are now permanent. Collapse event scheduled. 9 cycles. Do not allow observer to leave the site. If she remembers, it starts over. I rewound it. There was another voice layered beneath the distortion. Mine. I think I've been here before. I think I never left. That night I dreamed I was watching myself sleep again. Only this time I wasn't in the tower. I was underground, and the spiral wasn't just a symbol. It was a hole, pulling everything in, including me. I didn't sleep the night after the tape. Instead, I sat at the edge of the platform outside the tower, legs dangling above a void of pine, fog, and whispers. The wind carried voices that no longer tried to hide. Some sounded like me. Others sounded like things trying to be me. And above it all, the stars blinked in patterns I couldn't recognize, like constellations reconfiguring into something ancient and watching. There were no new ranger reports, no hikers, no check-ins. It was as if the world had turned its back on the forest, or the forest had slipped out from under the world. Then I got the package. No return address, just sitting at the base of the stairs one morning, like it had been waiting. Inside was a portable projector and a single reel of film. A note was folded beside it in neat printed letters. Watch at night. Alone. You've already seen it once. I waited until the moon was high and the tower wrapped in silence. Then I threaded the film through the projector and played it against the far wall. The footage was rough, black and white, no sound. It showed me, in the tower, from a strange angle, like from the corner of the ceiling. I was staring into the camera, unmoving, watching. Then the screen flickered. The film jumped. Suddenly, the tower was full of people, copies of me, all doing different things. One pacing, one crying, one hanging from the rafters, and one standing still. Looking directly at me, the real me. It raised its hand and pointed at the wall. I turned slowly. There, in the real tower, burned into the wall behind me, was a new spiral. Only this one wasn't made of ash or paint. It was made of eyes, drawn crudely, thousands of them spiraling inward, overlapping. At the center, one larger than the rest. And it was open, watching me. The next day, I tried one last time to leave. Made it to the tree line, compass in hand, heading east. But every time I checked my bearing, I was pointing back toward the tower. Even when I walked straight for 2 hours, I emerged at the base again. The tower was a loop now, or I was. And then came the storm. Not thunder and lightning, something beneath the forest groaned, like the world itself was cracking open. Lights pulsed through the trees, blue like from the facility I'd seen on the map. Like the glow that once flickered over the mountains after dark. And from the mist they emerged. Figures, dozens of them, not people, not fully. Some were naked, smooth-skinned, eyeless. Others wore ranger uniforms from decades past, their mouths gaping wide like scream masks. All of them moved toward the tower in silence, not attacking, not even threatening. Just watching, mirroring me. I ran inside and locked the hatch, but it didn't matter. They were already inside, standing in corners, behind the desk, reflected in the glass. I covered the windows, closed my eyes, and the radio came on. Observer status, stable. It wasn't a ranger's voice, not even human. Final cycle complete. Observer has synchronized. Spiral is now active. Then silence. And then, my own voice. They're using your eyes. Because they have none of their own. You watched too long. Now they see through you. I smashed the radio, but when I looked outside again, the tower was gone. Or maybe I was. I was standing in a concrete hallway, somewhere underground. The walls were marked with chalk symbols. A long mirror stretched across one side. I walked up to it and saw myself in the fire tower, staring out the window, alive, awake, trapped. I screamed at her, at me, to run, but she couldn't hear, because she was watching the trees, and something behind her was watching me. I don't know how long I've been here now. Sometimes I'm in the tower, sometimes I'm below it. Sometimes I'm in neither, just floating in the static between. But the forest keeps looping. Every cycle starts the same. Smoke on the horizon. a missing hiker, a voice on the radio saying, Tower 17, do you copy? And every time I answer, because I forget. That's the trick. That's the spiral. It makes you forget how many times you've watched yourself go mad. How many versions of you are screaming through radios no one hears. How many towers are lit like candles for something far older than fire. And now you're hearing this, which means you're in the spiral too. Welcome to the watch. They're already looking through you. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe.